You are listening to KSG Podcast. This is a short, crisp, concise, exam oriented, edited editorial for civil services aspirants. In this podcast, we are going to talk about the 17th Gender Budget. Source for the content is Akanksha Khullar's article for the Deccan Herald. Gender budgets have come to be recognized as a fiscal tool to rectify gender inequities and ensure women have access to socio-economic benefits as much as men. With this aim in mind and to bridge the prevailing gender divide, India began issuing gender budgets in 2005. India's gender budgets have succeeded in drawing attention to pressing gender issues. Now, given the adverse impact of COVID-19 on women and girls, gender responsive budgeting has become more critical than ever. Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman presented India's 17th gender budget on the 1st of February 2022. In a speech, FM emphasized shifting the focus from women's development to women-led development in the context of ongoing health crisis and the exacerbating gender inequalities. It is essential to understand whether the current gender budget truly serves as an instrument for ushering women-led development in the post-pandemic era. The direction provided by India's 2022 to 2023 budgets predominantly focuses on stimulating growth, with several new initiatives launched to place the country on a well defined path of economic recovery. Taking this vision forward, India's Gender Budget 2022 to 2023 also aims to address challenges women face and create opportunities for inclusive development, a top priority for Amrit Kal, the 25-year lead up to India at 100. But unfortunately, despite the country's big vision, the quantum of this year's gender budget, like previous years, has continued to remain below 5% of the total expenditure and less than 1% of the gross domestic product, that is the GDP. Meanwhile, in terms of absolute numbers, 1,71,006.47 crore rupees has been allocated for women centric schemes under the Gender Budget 2022 to 2023, which is an increase of 11.5% from 1,53,326 crore rupees allotted in the 2021 to 2022 budget estimates. However, as a proportion of total expenditure, the gender budget has declined from 4.4% to 4.3% for 2022 to 2023. This is despite the 4.72% of the total expenditure allocated to women's programs in the pre-pandemic era of 2020. According to an analysis by the All India Democratic Women's Association, the overall gender budget has decreased from 0.71% of the GDP of the revised estimates for 2021 to 2022 to 0.66% of the BE for 2022 to 2023. Under the current gender budget, the Part A component, which comprises 100% women specific schemes, has been allocated 26,772.89 crore rupees, increasing by 6% from the last gender budget, where 25,260.95 rupees was allocated. Part B, which includes programs where at least 30% of the allocation is for women, has witnessed a hike of 12% compared to last year, increasing from 1,27,749.83 rupees to 1,44,233.58 crore rupees. Now, there have been some shattered expectations. Though the gender budget in India has evolved with the learning and recommendations year after year, witnessing an 11-fold increase in the last 17 years, women have in reality continued to form the country's untapped potential. But the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic has further heightened their vulnerabilities, where women are experiencing disproportionate job losses, layoffs, and slower employment recovery. In January 2022, the size of the female labor force in India was still 9.4% smaller than in January 2020. Meanwhile, the rate of the male labor force has already recovered to the pre pandemic levels. The COVID 19 health crisis has pushed more and more women towards casual labor. From January to March 2021, women accounted for 9.3% of the casual labor force against 7.7% during January to March 2020. The current gender budget was thus expected to provide assistance to women to recover and grow through economic opportunities, tax benefits, formal sector jobs, and better financial inclusion. However, approximately 91% of the increase in this year's gender budget is from schemes in Part B, which are only 30% reserved for women. In contrast, the increase in Part A, that is entirely reserved for women only received a meager hike. While one might think these percentages are staggered across ministries, the truth is that a total of 10 schemes constitute nearly 80% of the gender budget 2022 to 2023. This clustering of the gender budget into a few schemes is nonetheless indicative of the lack of gender mainstreaming, particularly in job creating sectors including infrastructure or industrial development. The Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, of which women constitute a large number of the beneficiaries and often depend on it for employment, has been reduced by 20%. Evidently, women centered employment opportunities have not been prioritized in the current gender budget, especially in rural areas. So that's it for this podcast. Thank you so much for listening. To join KSG India courses and to crack the ICE exam, visit ksgindia.com. You can also get a PDF of this podcast on ksgindia.com. Thanks for listening.